Were you a little bit apprehensive about coming on this beforehand or not? Because it is a bit nerve-wracking, isn't it, when you're sitting down spilling your life to a camera and a stranger, pretty much, you know?
Yeah, I think a little bit apprehensive is a bit of an understatement.
Do you not do anything like this?
Not really, no. I've done a couple of interviews for like the news and things, but I really didn't enjoy them.
Really?
No.
So what was the interviews for the news? What was that
I
about?
did one when I lived in Liverpool, and that was before I was going to my first Worlds, and it was just went through my training and everything in the gym, and to say like Liverpool woman going to World's Strongest Disabled Woman. And then I did a second one at the start of last year when we opened the gym. BBC Look North came out to see us and did a piece on the gym because we have an accessible strongman gym in Durham.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
I didn't realise that. Whereabouts?
Down the road, 5 minutes.
Is it really?
Yeah.
What's the gym called?
The Legion Strength and Fitness.
Legion Strength and Fitness. What was the reason why you opened the gym?
It had been a dream of Dan's to open up a gym, and the direction of it changed when he met me to being a more accessible gym, because I've been fortunate that the gyms that I've trained at have been very welcoming, but I know that there are a lot that haven't been. So the first gym that I went to where I started Strongman was owned by a veteran. So he was very much a, let's just have a go at everything, we'll figure it out. And then I've been to different ones since, and they just don't have any understanding of it at all. So we decided to go down the direction of have accessible equipment so you can use it if you're in a chair or if you're missing a leg or missing an arm, like machine split so you can do unilateral training. And I'm an adaptive trainer, so I can actually adapt sessions for people. And we wanted to create it to help people, to just help one person.
Well, that's it, because you have an understanding about it. I mean, it's clearly it's much different to being in a chair, because what I've heard is it's the space to get the chair through to get access to the machine. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it's the way we designed the layout of it is that there is one clear walkway around the whole gym where you can get a chair around, and we have had 3 people come into the gym in their wheelchairs, and they've said that it's the best gym they've been in because you can get round everything, you can reach whatever you want. It's like we have a lap pull down that's adapted, so you can spin the seat out of the way and go up into your wheelchair, and the handle actually lowers down. So you don't have to get someone to reach it for you. You can actually just pull a pin, move the handle up, and it drops the handle down to your level so that you can use it. And it means that you're enabling people to do more by themselves.
Yeah, because I filmed something a couple of weeks ago, and Drew had to get some help to pull down just so you could get a hold of it, you know. And then he needed like a little bit of sort of help with the resistance and stuff like that because he can't stretch his arms too high.
Yeah.
So everyone has a varied disability,
Yeah.
and it's trying to adapt to that. I mean, what's your experience been like in gyms?
I've been very fortunate in the gyms that I've been in, that when I was in a commercial gym when I lived back in Liverpool, the PT that I had before I had my accident was still working there, so he helped me go through a lot of things. But other than that, it was watch YouTube, find Instagram videos of other amputees or other people with disabilities and see how they adapted things, then try it, see if it worked. If it didn't, figure out your own way.
So you were doing strength training, strong woman before you had your accident. Is that right?
I was strength training, so I was doing more of like bodybuilding just for the aesthetics of it, not to compete. And I was a rower. I used to row for Mersey Rowing Club in Liverpool, and then I had my accident, and my sporting direction changed quite a lot over the past 8 years now.
That's fascinating. I want to let's go back to the beginning. Were you born and raised in Liverpool?
Yeah.
I'm not hearing much of an accent there, Becca. Okay.
Thankfully, there's not much of an accent.
Really? You're going to upset a lot of people.
I think I've picked up more of the northeast one since living up here for 3 years.
Well, it does kind of rub off on you, but I think it's quite close. We're quite adjacent, I think. You know, it's the same as Scottish and Irish. I've been mixed for like Scottish and Irish before. So born and raised in Liverpool, just run through your kind of how you were raised? What's the family dynamic like? What's childhood like?
So I lived at home with my mum, dad, and older sister. Um, my dad was a teacher when I was a kid, and then set up his own business. And my mum was a doctor. Um, so my dad ended up being the parent at home more than my mum because she worked long shifts. She was a consultant on delivery suite, so she worked 12-hour shifts multiple days a week. So my dad was like the stay-at-home parent, so he'd do the school runs, the cooking, and everything like that. And then, which meant like we got quite close to my dad, whereas normally it's the other way around. So I was very much a daddy's girl in the sense that if he was doing jobs, I'd jump in on them. So I was quite a handy kid that I could fix things that other kids probably couldn't. And then as we grew up, the dynamics changed a bit because my dad set up his own business, was working more hours, and my mum dropped off on her hours. So she was at home more with us. So you got quite a nice balance of time with the two of them over the different ages.
So, what skills do you think you learned from your dad?
Uh, the one skill that I can remember that I did was I did some plumbing with him, and my joint didn't leak and his did, and I was about 8. And then I went back into school and they're like, "What did you do over the summer?" And I was like, "I did plumbing." And they were like, "What?"
You should get extra points for that. I think because of life skills, I keep banging on about this as well, and to other people. Why don't we teach life skills like this?
Hmm.
Because I think it's important as well.
Whereas I'd gone into design and technology in school, and you have to solder wiring and stuff. And I was like blazing through it, and they're like, "Have you done this before?" I was like, "Yeah, but with a blowtorch, with like a big gas bottle blowtorch." And they were like, "What? What's going on here?" I was like,
And how old were you when you were doing this? Like teenager,
"About 10."
10.
The gas bottle was bigger than I was.
Quite sizey, them gas bottles, aren't they? So yeah, um, that's fascinating. So, at what age did this kind of shift change from dad to mum?
Um, Probably when we went into senior school, so around 13, because my dad was working long hours in his business. Um, and it was quite nice to have a bit more time with my mum, because she very much was very career driven, and we'll talk about it now. And she always says she waited till she was a bit older to have kids because she'd worked hard to become a doctor and wanted to become a consultant before she took the time out to have children, because it's a lot harder to go back once you've had kids to then progress your career.
So, your parents were older than like your mate's parents at the time.
A little bit, yeah. So my mum had me when she was 35, and I know like my best friend from school's mum had her in her like mid 20s, early 20s. So it was quite a big like difference, but you still got the same. Like I never saw it any different.
I suppose when you're a kid, you don't really see your parents' age until you're having a conversation.
Mm,
So it's like, why has your dad got grey hair? Because sometimes it's your grandparents are closer age to the parents
yeah,
when they're older as well.
but it was like my mum and dad were always very open about like if we asked when we were kids about it, like if why were they a bit older than like my friend's parents, and they said it was because they wanted to establish their careers. Like they hadn't made the plan, like the set in stone plan of when to have kids, but their careers went down a route that they wanted to progress down. And then when that was achieved was when they decided to have kids.
So as a kid, were you kind of active? Were you sporty just to kind of relate to what, you're into now?
I was surprisingly sporty as a kid. I was a really short, chunky kid. Um, but I was really big into sports. I did judo quite a lot as a kid up until I was about 16. And when I went into secondary school, I did hockey. I'm trying to think now what I did. Hockey, netball, rounders, all for the school. And with school, we went to the county championships with rounders, which everyone thought was really weird for me being like the really short, fat kid, but I could run and throw a ball.
But that's it. Is like athleticism as well. It's much different.
Mm.
It depends on your kind of drive, and I think those sort of practical skills with your dad. Is there something in that? Did your dad influence you through the sporting kind of
Well,
process?
my mum and my dad were both quite sporty when they were younger. So my dad played volleyball um, to quite a high level. He got selected for England men's camp. And my mum played university hockey and county hockey, but they made the agreement that they'd never push us into either of those sports. And I ended up playing hockey as a kid and then playing volleyball as an adult. So they were a bit like, it's come full circle that we were adamant they weren't going to push us into any of their sports, and I ended up doing both of them.
So did you know this as a kid though or not, or did you just fall
No,
into it?
it was, I knew that they'd played sports, um, but not that they didn't push us into it. Like, they wanted us to do whatever we wanted. So like my sister did horse riding. And then when I was little, I got into horse riding, but like on a weekend, and through the week I did all sorts of other sports.
So it's kind of, you've always been active and been doing something as well. And it's the practicalities of like, you kind of, you're doing a bit of plumbing and you're doing a bit of soldering and stuff like that. Um, I mean, it's probably just, it seems like a normal childhood as well, sporty, active. Um, so let's get into the strength training. So what was it about the strength training and the gym and all that kind of stuff? Was it all related, and what did you go on to do as a job as well?
So I found strength training when I was 18. I'd done like boot camps and things before that, and when I went to uni, I started putting myself through my own boot camps at uni because they had a rugby pitch, so I'd like use the tires and things to do it. But when I left uni, I'd left an abusive relationship, and my head was a bit battered from all of that. So I found the gym, and it was a way to channel my demons, basically quieten the noise and better myself, because at that moment in time, I didn't want to be the person that had gone through that. I wanted to make myself into this stronger, braver, different woman than I was when that happened.
So this is happening at uni. You must be like, what, 19, 20, 21?
I was 18. It was just before I went to uni, and I went to uni down in the Midlands to get away from it, but it followed me down to uni.
Really? I mean, can you talk about that? Can you talk about what was involved in that and the issues with that and how that affected you?
Yeah, it was my first relationship, and it was pretty much textbook narcissism, psychological manipulation, physical abuse. Um,
Physical abuse. How
um,
old were you at this time?
17, 10, and 18.
You just clearly met socially,
Yeah.
just a normal kind of meeting, boyfriend, girlfriend. And like, when did you know? When did it start to turn and change?
It was when I moved away to uni.
So, so you had a plan, sorry, and then you kind of.
Yeah, so we got together in the April, and I was going to university in the September, and I'd already picked to go down south for the course that I wanted to do. And I was talking with my flatmate at the time about it, because my partner at the time was like ringing nonstop and everything. Like, we'd be out at freshers and he'd be ringing, being like, "Who are you with?" and all of these things. And she was like, "That's not normal." I was like, "No, that isn't normal." And she was like, "No, it's not. Like, that's like controlling. It's like the things he was saying," because he was on loudspeaker one night when we'd been in the bar. She's like, "It's not. It's like narcissistic manipulation, proper textbook controlling behavior." And she was the one that gave me the courage to be like, "No, it's done."
So was there any signs before this, before you moved away, or was it just because you moved away the jealousy started to kick in?
It had started while I was back at home, and my mum and dad actually had some concerns because he was older than I was. He was in his late 20s, and I was 17 when we met. So they'd ask for us to stay in my mum and dad's, because they were like, if something happens under our roof, we can deal with it. But if you go to his house 30 minutes away, one, we don't know where you are, and two, we don't know what's happening there or what situation you're going to be in. Like, how fast can we get there if you ring us, and what state you'd be in? So they were like, if you're under our roof, we can sort of protect you a bit more.
Did it kind of slowly start from like verbal to physical? Did it get to physical or?
Yeah, it did. The worst one that I remember is pinned me to the wall by my throat, basically because I refused to have sex with him one day.
Really?
Yeah.
And how far into the relationship were you?
about a month.
A month. And how long did you stay with him for then?
Um, it was about 4 months because I went to university early, so we became boyfriend girlfriend in the end of the April May, and then I went to uni at the end of August.
So something like that, what makes you kind of stay? Is it just
I'd never been in a relationship. I didn't know what I was expecting. I thought it was normal, and it was only when I went to a different environment where with completely people with completely fresh eyes to the situation pointed out that it wasn't normal.
it's sometimes leaving your home environment kind of opens your eyes to
Mm,
how other people live their lives as well. And I think it was probably a good thing that you moved away, probably helped the situation and
yeah,
helped you escape what could have been a worse situation.
yeah.
Do you think about that, or do you just kind of brush it off and move on?
I tried to brush it off because it did impact a lot of my life for a long time.
Even just for the 4 months of being with somebody
Yeah,
like that, it's huge. That
I didn't start dating anyone for a good 3 years after that. I just didn't trust people. And I think I was very naive because I'd not been in a relationship because I was so into my sport when I was younger. I didn't have, like that teenage romance or anything like that. And so when the first time someone showed that interest, I think I jumped onto it and thought that's what it was, all sunshines and rainbows. That's what it was supposed to be like, even though it was bad. That's what I thought was normal because I hadn't experienced anything else. But for a long time after that, it did impact, and it's probably had an impact up until about 3 years ago, where I met my partner, and it was still in the back of my mind, and we worked together to break through a lot of those mental barriers that I'd had.
so that first experience really kind of clung on, didn't it?
Yeah,
So new lease of life in college, university, new friends, all that kind of stuff.
yeah. And then I started taking myself through some training because I was playing university netball, and all we did was netball sessions. So I started taking myself through strength and conditioning sessions to try and get better and get faster. And then when I left university, I just joined a general pure gym to start putting myself through my paces. Downloaded an online program that you buy, and it's just a general one for women. But it was like a 12-week plan, and it had different progressions and regressions, and it was like quite an in detail one for an online plan. And then I started working in a hotel because when I came back from uni, I didn't have any work lined up or anything, but I still had a car to pay for. So I started working in a hotel, but it was a 10-minute walk from the gym. So I'd go to the gym before work, go to work, and then go back and do a second session after.
So the gym was really your
Yeah,
calling, wasn't it? Yeah, you're kind of working around to kind of go to the gym in
yeah.
a way. Because what did you plan on doing after uni? What was the plan for that?
Well, I originally decided to be a veterinary nurse, which was why I went to university, but I left after my first year because I wasn't in it. My head wasn't in it because of everything that had gone on. So I came home and just found any work that I could that covered my car basically.
Really? So that time, that first relationship has had a massive effect even on the university life as
Yeah.
well. And you're going to the gym to try and get yourself through it and get your head
Yeah.
kind of sorted. What does what did going to the gym and working out do for you?
It was it's hard to describe. It's when you have a mental trauma, if you go and people say if you go and beast yourself, but you don't have to push yourself to the point of pain, it quietens everything in your mind. Like the outside world doesn't exist. It's just you doing what you're doing for whatever goal. And it got me to a point where my physique dramatically changed. I was stronger, I was leaner. Like I looked like a whole different person to the young girl that I felt like I was when that happened. Um, and I felt like I was starting to become who I should have been.
Did people mention it to you as well?
They noticed the physical change quite a lot because I'd never wear like dresses or anything when we went out. I'd always be in jeans or baggy clothes. And if I went out with my friends from work or anything, I'd start wearing dresses and they'd comment on like my shoulders or like my back was coming on or anything. And they're a bit like, holy shit. You're like, we didn't realize you'd got that defined.
And what's that doing for you?
It likes a spark.
It
It,
does, doesn't it? It
it
makes you feel better, doesn't it? Yeah. That's the thing. You're doing something hard, you're grinding, and other people are noticing it because you're seeing yourself every day in the mirror. So it's really hard to see a change. And I think it does help if somebody does comment and just give you props now and again. It does help. I mean, that's possible. Does that reflect on how you act, actively kind of train people and the motivation you give to people as well, going through something like that? What's your attitude to other people?
I think it's my personal experiences have made me a bit more open to people. So quite often when I first meet a client, we'll have obviously the general discussion about your goals and everything and what you want from a plan or from a session or anything like that, what we can do to work together. But we ask if there's anything else that might have a limitation on the training, whether it's, illness, past experiences or anything like that. And we end up my sessions are generally more of a bit of a counselling session than a training session sometimes.
I was going to ask. I was going to ask. Do you see something in people that you think there's an issue which I need to kind of address, or maybe let's get to it by just chipping away nicely and loosely, just to get to an underlying issue? Do you see that a lot?
Yeah. I think I've found through going through the trauma that I have through like the relationship and the physical trauma from my accident that I've been through, you kind of it's not quite an empath, but you can tell when something's wrong with people or when they're not right. And depending on the person, you can prompt it or you sort of guide the conversation to the point where they'll then open up. It's like Dan hates it because I can tell when he's not doing all right and he's just a bit like, piss off.
It is tough because when you're close to somebody, it's hard to hear that. I think it's easy from a stranger.
Yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of like if you're visiting other places. Plus, I think when you go to a gym, you're putting your whole self out there.
Yeah.
All the vulnerabilities are coming out, aren't they? Because you've never done this before. I don't know what to do. And if you're going to put somebody through their paces, it really shows their true colors,
Mm.
doesn't it?
And I think it's with me being a coach, having one arm, um, people aren't afraid to be that vulnerable with me because we've had people come into the gym and they go, how much balls did it take for you to jump into this? I was like, well, I didn't want to do it. Dan sort of forced me to do it because he was like, you've done all this stuff with your life. You've got so much experience and knowledge to give people. You should do it.
I mean, how much does Dan kind of help out and what does that mean to you?
He's always there in the sessions. I might have a session written, like I've written someone a plan and spent ages doing it and he'll always interfere in the background. But it's good because it's because I didn't have the confidence in myself when I started, and my first PT session was with one of my long-standing clients now, Natalie, and I love her to pieces. She's a really good friend now. But I had an anxiety attack before she came in the gym. I rang Dan when he was at work, and I was like, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. I'm just going to close the gym. And he literally was like, stop being a soft, right? Get on with it. Like, the first one's always going to be the worst one. Because I was like, I've got one arm, like, what am I going to be able to show this woman? And he was like, well, she's come to you for a reason. Show her what you do and that you can coach.
Is it right to call it a disability or not? Or do you not call it disability?
Yeah, I'd call it. It is disabling at times.
I asked somebody yesterday. I said I was gonna categorize one of the films, and I'm trying to make them more visible for people. And I said, "Is disability all right?" Because I spend so much time with people, and they're so able. I felt it was an insult. That's coming from me. I thought, so I'm going to ask. So that's why I asked the question, because sometimes there's various levels of disability.
Yeah.
But how do you see it? Because a lot of people who I've kind of talked to were able-bodied and then aren't. That's a huge thing. And to be labeled something new, I think it's quite a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, it is.
What's that like to you? How do you see it from able-bodied to not?
I think it's a hard it's like a fine line, and I think everyone likes to be labeled something different, which is what's the difficult thing, because we as individuals who whether you do technically have a disability, and whether you see yourself as being disabled or differently abled or adaptive, you still all have a disability of some form. That's what the illness or the limb loss or the condition has been labeled at. And I think as time's gone on, it's got a little bit political with the labels. So it's caused a lot of controversy in sports. So I've done CrossFit, adaptive CrossFit, and disabled strongman. And it's caused a lot of controversy in those sports because people didn't, in CrossFit, they didn't want to be labeled as disabled because they were like, well, I'm not disabled. I can do just what you can. I just have a disability. So they called it adaptive because you adapt to workout. And then disabled strongman for 2 years when I first started, everyone was proud of the title, like disabled strongman, because it was, you've achieved this while having a disability. It wasn't so much a label, it was like taking pride back into it. You're taking the power back out of the word and giving it a different meaning. But then that's changed to adaptive now because there was a bit of a hoo-ha around being called disabled.
I think this is a fascinating topic, Becca, because I would talk to you differently a little bit than when I'm sitting here with my voice on this camera. And we all do.
Mm.
And we know this. And you just want to kind of get the wording right.
Mm.
But I'm not getting the wording right for others. I'm getting the wording right out of respect for you.
Yeah.
Because I know for a fact if my kids or me were in a similar position, then I'd want to make sure that the wording is right.
Yeah.
I do think the use of words and the labeling, it's more for the other people, not for the people with a disability, I find. Do you find that a lot as well?
Yeah, I do. And I think the problem with it is that someone else wants to feel comfortable with your disability when you should just look at a person as a person, not, right, they've got one arm or they've got a brain injury or they're in a wheelchair. That doesn't define who they are. They just so happen to have that. Like, you need to treat them like the person that they are. And that's how, like, I do it with everyone. Like, I've met all sorts of people over the past 8 years, and some like to be called disabled, some don't like to be called disabled, some resent the disability, some sort of welcomed it because it's given them a second chance at life. And everyone's different, and I think at the end of the day, everyone just needs to look at the person in front of them and just treat them like a person. You don't need to look for a label. They don't need to fit in a box. They're just the person that's in front of you, and that's what everyone needs to focus on.
But also being very super sensitive around the subject and not asking, I don't think that helps. I think it
No.
helps because you've been through something that I haven't been through. I've never been through it.
Yeah.
So I think it's acceptable to be inquisitive, have that childlike inquisition, right? To go, look, please tell me your story because I don't understand this.
Yeah.
And let's talk about it, please.
I think it's welcoming when adults are open to talking to you about it, because kids have no filter. Kids will come up to you, and most people will love, unless you're having a really bad day, most people will love a kid coming up and going, "What happened to your arm?" Because, like, the fun thing with kids, it's like I've done it before. I've gone at shark attack, or like I've got nephews and nieces, and I've gone, "I don't know, I lost it. Will you help me find it?" And they'll run around the garden trying to find my arm. And you're like, because you can make it, like, depending on the circumstance. Like, I've done it before, like with my partner's kids, they've asked what happened to it, and depending on the age of, and oh, it got hurt and they couldn't fix it, so this was the best option. Or you can make a game of it. You're like, I don't know, like, where's it gone? Like, can you help me find it? And they'll literally run around and help you search for your arm that's not been there for like 5 years.
But it's usually the adults who have a problem.
Yeah.
They'll hush the children. I don't. I encourage. go and ask the question. Why not?
Mm.
What is that about society? It drives me absolutely nuts, Becca. It must drive you up the wall.
It's fear of offending. Adults have a fear of saying something wrong to people. And I think if everyone just bit the bullet, and if you want to ask, ask, because we can see the stares. Like I've had it like when I've been limping with my legs been bad, or if I have a t-shirt on and my arms out, the adults stare. Kids will stare and then they'll sort of whisper, and you're like, they want to ask you something, but adults won't. They'll look, and they want to ask something or they want to know. They have the questions going on internally, but they don't have the guts to come up and ask you. And I think they need to normalize asking those questions. Like, all you can do is ask, and you might get told to F off, or you might have an open conversation with someone and it'll educate you. And you might have a really good interaction from taking that chance to have that conversation with someone.
But everybody, like you mentioned, every individual's different as well.
Yeah.
So people might react differently.
Yeah.
They might not want to talk about it, or they might want to talk about it.
A big thing for me was I when I lost my arm, I got invited to my prosthetic centre's Christmas party, which was all kids, because they were like, "Can you just come and see them?" Basically, just to see what it's like for a young adult, because I was 21 when I lost my arm, to have a limb loss and them to see you as a grown up, like with your makeup done and dresses on for the little girls and things. And I went, and the kids were all like, like, how did you do that and everything? I was like, well, I'll come down and I'll show you one day. And then the parents would come over and they'd be like, how did you manage through school and everything? I was like, I didn't. I was like, it was only like 8 months ago that I lost my arm. And they were like, because of how I embraced what happened to me, people felt a bit more comfortable coming to have that discussion. And I'd rather open that discussion with someone and make them feel a bit more at ease. Because you can tell if you're sat with someone or you're passing someone, they tense up because there's a question burning that they won't ask you, or they don't know how to act around you. And if you just started a conversation, you'd have a bit of banter and you'd all relax. And it normalizes it.
How quick was it to talk about it after the accident? How just kind of to take ownership of it?
Pretty much straight away. I didn't really believe what had happened to me. I felt like I was watching it happen to someone else for quite a while. But because when I had my accident, I'd started working in a hospital, and my mum was a doctor, so I went into quite a clinical way of thinking. So if anyone asked what had happened, I could relay the specifics of the accident, like the specifics of all my injuries, just like I was reading them off a list. And a lot of people told me that I was quite emotionless with it. And I said, well, the way that I coped with it, because so many people asked the questions, was I detached myself emotionally from it. There'd be certain points through the year or the month, it was quite regularly to start off with, where you'd have this emotional build up because you had taken all the emotion away from it when you were telling everyone. But that was how I coped with it. And now it's literally just like I'm reading a fact sheet. And I can be like, yeah, I'm pretty lucky.
Yeah, I suppose you're going through every day trying to adapt, and you might be reaching for something. What's it? Was that a case of something? Because you go default setting, and when your default's changed, it takes a while to change the default.
Yeah. So I find it quite a lot because I was right handed. That I'll do it. The one that gets me the most, where I actually laugh at it now, is if you get up in the morning and you go to push yourself out of bed, and I'll just and I was like face plant, and I'm like, oh, it's not there, and that's 8 years on.
Being right-handed as well, Becca. I mean, we all know what that dominant hand does absolutely
Mhm.
everything. Right, even writing stuff. What's it like to change?
It was hard, like really hard initially, but I did a lot of basic skills to get my. So everyone says that you can mimic how you write with your dominant hand with your non-dominant. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. You have to figure out your new way to write. So I actually got kids writing books, Where it's like a whiteboard and it's got the letters and everything in it. So you go over it with a whiteboard marker to get used to the shapes of the letters. And my mum and dad bought me colouring books and dot to dots for that coordination, because as crap as I was at colouring, I still wouldn't go out the lines. With my left hand, I refused to go outside the lines. So there was patches in all of them, but they didn't go out the lines. But dot to dots were the best one, because you have to concentrate. So it's like cognitive as well, that you have to teach your left hand to do that. So because you're concentrating on where you're writing, you're looking for the next number and everything and making the shape. That was the thing that brought on my writing the most.
You know what, Becca? I'm just sitting here, just imagining having to use my left hand. It's upsetting us. Do you know what I mean? It is, because I'd be useless. I'd throw that book across the room. You know, what was it? Did you have moments like that?
It was more when like I'd be cooking or carrying things. I have a big thing in my mum and dad's house that is called a drop ball moment, which was the first big incident that I had, where we were away in Scotland for a friend's wedding, and I'd made myself some dinner, put it in a bowl, and I had a cup of tea. So I put my cup of tea under my bowl to carry it out like I'd done loads at home, tripped over the lip in the cabin, and everything went everywhere and it smashed. Everyone got told to F off, and I sat outside and cried. And I was like, what am I doing? And it was because I was not being lazy, but I was trying to be so independent that I didn't want to ask for help. Because I could have done 2 trips, or I could have asked my mum to bring one of them out, but I didn't. I wanted to do it on my own. And I think when you're so focused on trying to do everything on your own, you have those drop ball moments, and that's what they're called now in our house. That if something happens, everyone has a drop ball moment where, yeah, something goes wrong, you allow yourself to feel that, but then it's like build a plan to have that not happen again.
Were you trying to double down on the independence? It's the stubbornness, isn't it?
Yeah, I was trying to prove that I still could do what I did before, because it wasn't that long after my accident. I think it was maybe 7 months after that I was trying to prove that I could do it.
Was it more of a frustration in yourself, or was it a frustration of other people asking you all the time?
It's a bit of both, because um, you're frustrated in yourself because you used to be able to do it and you can't now. But then, other people only have your best interests at heart and they only want to help, but it does get irritating pretty quickly when people are like, do you want a hand? So I ended up turning that into, do you want a hand? I'd be like, yeah, I'd love one. I really would love another one. And so they stopped asking, do you want a hand? They're like, do you want some help? Because it got to a point where it did start getting infuriating, and I did snap at people for it and be like, no, I just want to try it. I'll ask you for help. But then I'm that hyper independent person that I wouldn't ask for help unless I was really, really, really struggling. And I tried it about 20 times and it didn't work.
Do people ask you now, like, for help, as if this has just happened to you? It must be hard because you're strangers outside. Everyone tries to go over polite. The thing is, just leave people alone, and if they need it, they'll ask, or if they're
Aye.
struggling, then jump in.
But we've got a couple of the lads in the gym who, like, I'll be helping set up a bar or something for someone in the gym. And like I can pick plates up because I sort of hold it and grip it and then put it on a bar. And they'll be sort of watching and you're like, I'll ask you if I need help, it's fine. But but they're like, well, it's more, I think, because they're the older gentlemen in the gym, so it's a bit more like being gentlemanly, like, do you want some help? Like, we should really be doing this for you. Not you're incapable or you're struggling, let me help you. It's more, I should probably be doing that for you rather than you doing it yourself.
Yeah, it's kind of old school politeness, a little bit cross between father figurey stuff,
Yeah.
you know. But it's understanding that, because people in the gym, they get it, they
Yeah.
get it quick, and they can take a go away really easily.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? Because you're used to it, because you're grinding all the time. It's just becomes a norm, and then they might laugh about it. But it's a good door opener, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a good conversation starter. Um, have you had any drop ball moments in the gym?
I don't think so in the gym. No, I don't think so in ours. I have done before, and I was trying to load a stone to a 6-foot platform and just had it on my head.
I thought you were going to say just a plate or something.
No, it's a little stone. It was only a 30-kilo stone,
Only.
but I was trying to load it to the top platform in the gym, and I'm not the littlest. I'm 5'9", and I thought I'd be able to do it, but I was on my tiptoes with the stone like here, and I kept trying to press it, and it just kept going sideways or dropping back on my face. And I was like, I will get this up at some point, and I just ended up sat on the floor going, I don't know how I'm going to put this up there.
So let's jump back a bit. I've probably done all of this in reverse, but I just like the way the flow of the conversation goes, because obviously you want to get to the reason you lost your arm. You said you were really into rowing,
Yeah.
champion rower. And how old were you when you were doing this? And then let's lead up to the accident, please.
So I found rowing when I was 19. So I'd come back from uni. I'd started training in the gym, and it was some big changes. And it was my mum that suggested I have a go because she'd met one of the GB rowers when she was at uni, because my mum played a lot of university sport, and they were going to do a talk for the university rowing club. And she said, like, 20 years on, she was like, I can remember the build of them women. And she was like, you are that build, you're tall, you've got strong shoulders, you've got strong legs, you should be really good at rowing. And I went down and I was like hooked on it, like going down onto the water at like 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning.
Really? So you just committed straight away? Brilliant.
Was doing, I think it was 3 water sessions a week and 1 land session on top of 2 sessions a day in the gym.
That's a lot. And this is working around your hotel job as well when you came back.
Yeah, so when I did that, I was in the hotel. Then my sister set up her own business, so I was training in the morning, going to the hotel, training after work, and then going to my sister's work, because they were subletting out of someone's unit, so they'd go in after they'd finished all their work to use the equipment. So I'd start my day at 5 and end it at midnight, and do that every day.
Really?
Yeah.
It's a lot of work.
And then when I was doing that, my mum got me work experience in the hospital she worked at, because she basically said, you're too smart to be cleaning hotel rooms for the rest of your life. I'll get you work experience in different departments and you can see if you like anything. So it was like radiography, physio, pharmacy. But pharmacy were the first ones that got back in contact, and I went and I did a month's work experience with them after I'd finished my shift at the hotel, and a job came up as a student technician, pharmacy technician, interviewed for it, and I got it. And that was my career up until now.
Let's get to the accident, because
Mhm.
I haven't been told. I haven't talked to Jenny about anything. I just wanted to ask you.
So I got my pharmacy technician job in the September, and I just started my course, and I had my accident in the January. So January 29th, 2017, at about 6 o'clock in the morning, I was going down up the M6 from Liverpool to Preston for a music competition, and I hit black ice on the motorway. So I went from the middle lane in the motorway to the central reservation, rolled back down the motorway, and ended up in the inside lane facing the hard shoulder.
Just literally black ice.
Yeah.
Driving normal day.
And I found out after it that all my bandmates from the brass band that I was in at the time and the band I used to be in, they'd all driven that road before and after I did. And it was just pot luck that it was me that day.
Can you remember anything from the accident?
I have one snapshot of the actual crash itself, and that was grass coming in through my window. I can hear it and feel it. And then I can remember waking up in my car and everything until I got put in the ambulance.
So driving, and the only memory you have is grass, window, feeling, ambulance.
So I woke up in my car before they got me in the ambulance, and I can remember them cutting me out of my car and shouting at the firefighters quite a lot to they were trying to be polite because I was a lady in the car, and I told them to F off at one point, so they're like, "It's fine, lads, just carry on as normal." So they were having like banter back and forth with me, and I knew because I was actually going for my army selection 4 weeks after I had my car accident, and I was going in to be a combat medic tech. And so I'd done a lot of work around, how shock comes into your system and everything, and you need to keep people alert and everything, otherwise they'll go into shock and everything will shut down. That's why I was talking to them the whole time, and they were a bit like, "Why are you talking to us so much?" I was like, "If I shut up, I'll go to sleep." And I knew that I was dying in my car. I couldn't remember saying to them, "I'm going to die in this car." Just tell my parents that I love them.
Really?
Yeah.
What? How? Why?
It was it was just a feeling that I got, like a wave, because the way that I was in my car, that I was in a tiny little Citroen C1 12 plate, so there's little tiny shoe boxes. My chair had collapsed, so I was looking at the ceiling. My right leg was out the driver's window, and that was painful. My pelvis was really painful, and I had absolutely no sensation in my right arm at all. It was just like nothing was there. I wouldn't have even known if my arm was there. It just felt like there was nothing. No pain, no numbness, just no feeling at all. And I started to get cold because it had been frosty. It was 6 a.m. on a Sunday, January, and the firefighters started putting the coats and things on me, but I just said to them, I was like, "I'm gonna die. Just tell my family I love them, and please don't leave me alone while I die. I don't want to be on my own."
Was it just an acceptance?
Yeah.
Were you fine with that?
Mm.
Really? Just had it in your head.
Yeah.
This is what's going to happen. Do you reflect on that?
Yeah. I don't know how I was so peaceful with it, because I've had a lot of ups and downs with my mental health since, where the thoughts crossed my mind of taking my life, and I could never go through with it because I was given a second chance, and I just can't wrap my head around why I was so calm and at peace with dying in my car that day with strangers around me.
Does that change your mindset moving forward?
Yeah. I very much felt like I had a second chance at life. Like, I had life-changing injuries that have still been causing me trouble up until last year. I've still been having surgeries and things like that. But I was I always say this to people. They ask, "How did you just get on with it?" And I say, when you go through a trauma, you always have two options. You get on with it, or you don't. If you don't, you end up the vegetable. You don't leave your house, you have resentment for everything. You get on with it, you live your life. Take the opportunities that come across your path. You've been given this second chance, don't waste it. And I always say, when I was in hospital after my accident, I saw my mum, my dad, and my sister were all looking at me with this look on their face, and I can still remember it. I can never describe it, but I can clearly see them all. And I couldn't give up. I had to survive and live so they didn't have that look again.
What was that look? Was that fear from them about what's going to happen?
I think so. My mum's is the complicated one. It's I think because of her medical background, they'd give her a snapshot of something and she'd know everything. Whereas my dad knew what my mum said, and my sister was a bit in hysterics and just knew it was bad and that I could die. But my mum, when I see that look on my mum's face of fear, it's bad.
Yeah, because she sees us all the time. She understands what the future's going to be. Did you talk to her about that?
I've spoken quite a lot since about it. And because we've had discussions around the lasting impact of trauma, not on just on the individual, but on those going through it as well. And she said she obviously knew everything that was happening, and she had the statistics in her head of whether when they tried to save my arm, what the likelihood of me getting a blood clot that went to my brain and have a stroke. Would I die on the table? You know, did I lose too much blood and everything? She'd already gone through all of that before I went into theatre. And we had the discussion about that I made her approach it as doctor rather than mum. Mm-hmm. And she hated me for it for a while. And we had this discussion not actually that long ago when Dan had his accident. Because I said, I know you hated me, but I need you to understand why I did it. I was like, I was off me nut on painkillers. I was like, I would not remember anything that they were saying to me, so I needed you to be your doctor self, to process all of this information, to then tell me. I said, but I also thought you'd deal with the situation better with your clinical, logical thinking rather than your emotional, maternal thinking. And she literally looked at me and she went, how on earth did you contemplate that approach to me while you were in the situation you were in? I was like, you know, those around you, you know, your loved ones and how they best should deal with things. And that was with her.
Yeah. That's the thing. Sometimes parents don't really see who you are until something like that happens. And then almost you're handing the baton off to who's the most mature in the room.
Yeah.
And it clearly was yourself at the time because you're going through it. And to be that just brazened about it, you know. I mean, you couldn't not be though, could you?
No, it's like they asked my mum to tell me that I was having my arm amputated. So the day of my accident, I still had my arm. I'd broke my elbow that damaged the brachial artery, so the artery that runs down your bicep. And they took me in to try and do an arterial graft to try and save that blood supply. And I was in theatre for 12 hours. And the grafts would work, but then would start firing blood clots off. And the problem with that is the clots go straight to your brain and it's a stroke or death. So they came out after 12 hours and said, we can't keep doing this, like they're not taken properly. And my mum said to them, do you need to amputate today or does she have 12 hours with that arm to make an informed decision? So they bandaged it all up. I still had my arm. They came the next day and the surgeon had asked my mum if she would tell me because he thought it would be processed better if it came from a relative rather than from a doctor that I didn't even remember. And the anaesthetist walked straight past them, having the conversation in the corridor to come consent me for an amputation. And I can remember saying to him, I'm not having my arm amputated, you've got the wrong person. And he was like, no, it's you. And I'm like, no, it's fucking not. It's not. You've got the wrong person. And my mum came running in and she went, yeah, you are. And they're like, do you understand why you've got to have it done? They went through everything. And I was like, yeah, but it doesn't mean I want you to do it, but I know why you have to do it. Then I proceeded to try and insist on signing my consent form myself with my left hand, which looked like a toddler had scribbled over the piece of paper.
Was that a hard thing to hear and to kind of accept?
Looking back, no. Because I sat with my mum for about 5 minutes and they came back to obviously consent me for it. And I said, I don't want you to do it, but I know you have to. And I can't remember my thinking around it or anything. And my mum is still baffled by the amount of logic that I had in that situation. But she said, we gave you the facts and you were like, right, that's what's got to happen. Do it.
So the reality after you have your arm amputated, what's that like? Waking up, realizing, settling in. Does it actually settle in to your brain? Or?
It was hard. It was really hard. It was all right through the day when you had visitors, but night time's the worst when you're on your own. But I was quite fortunate that I had a friend actually reach out. Her boyfriend in America was an amputee, So she actually reached out to me and spoke to him and asked if he'd ring me on a night. So the nights where I was struggling, I'd call him all the way in Texas, and he'd talk me through like the feelings I was feeling and that things were normal. Like normalize the experience you're going through. Like you're not alone. This is what most people go through. And like questions to ask, or if I had any questions about what the road ahead might look like or anything. And he did that for about 2 weeks straight, pretty much every night. And it massively helped having that support.
I was going to ask, how much did that help?
It was life changing. Like it was, because I think if I'd been left with my own thoughts, the ward weren't experienced in amputations. My family weren't experienced in amputations. I got a visit from the local prosthetic centre that gave me a booklet on exercises that basically were all for lower limb. There was nothing for arm. They gave me a big beach ball to try and do some exercises with, and I went, that's really good work. Having one arm, what am I going to do with a beach ball? So they weren't very helpful. Like the resources we had at the time weren't that helpful. But looking back on it now, there is a lot more resources becoming available. So there's a couple of charities and things now. One that I started working with back in Liverpool, who've recently expanded to the northeast. They are now like a hotline for hospitals. So they go to certain hospitals and you have a call list. And so if you have an amputee come in, they'll ring the charity and they'll find someone who is an ambassador or a member of the charity who has a similar disability or a similar amputation or has lost their limb in a similar way. And they'll go ask that person to go and see them in the hospital. So you actually have that peer-to-peer support of someone who has been in your situation, rather than like Nurse Joe, who's never been through anything, never seen anything, trying to help you. You actually have that lived in experience trying to help you.
Yeah. I think connecting with somebody who's been through something similar is the most important thing. Doctors can do a certain thing, but it's more of a practical thing to get you to where you need to be. But it's you need to understand and figure out what life is going to be like from here on.
Yeah.
So I think that's the most important thing, is that connection and people and places like that to kind of help. What's the charity?
It's called the Amputation Foundation.
And have they been really good?
Yeah, so they established in 2017, so it was later on in the year that I had my accident, and I ended up I've been to see a couple of amputees, women and a teenage girl as well who was born missing her arm, but I was asked to go and see her when I started competing in strongman, to sort of show her what the world can be like, what you can do. Like I was working in a hospital, I was a qualified pharmacy technician, I was competing in strongman. Like I could do my hair and my makeup if I went out with the girls. Like I could do everything that you could. Like I was driving and everything again. And so I got asked to go and offer that support and that sort of light at the end of the tunnel to show like this is what life is like.
And what does it feel like to do that?
It scares me shitless when I have to go. But at the end of it, it's really rewarding. And I think it's depending on the person. If it's an adult, you can have those hard conversations with them if they're in a dark place or they feel lost, because you can guarantee that anyone who's been through a life-changing situation, whether it's resulted in an injury or whether it's just an event, you'll have those dark times. And just talking to someone who's been through them and helping someone see that light and see that life isn't over is really rewarding.
Have you had dark times yourself?
Yeah, quite a lot.
Quite a lot. What were the reasons? What's the reasons for the dark times?
I struggled a lot with PTSD. I was diagnosed 2 years after my accident with PTSD from my accident, then diagnosed with complex PTSD from my sexual assault when I was younger. So I was a bit of a tough cookie for them to try and help. But a big thing for me was I'd have flashbacks. So I'd hear the sounds of them cutting me out of my car. I'd have smells. I'd hear the voices remember conversations and everything that I had, pain that I was experiencing at the time, and that caused a lot of disturbed sleep. So I didn't sleep for quite a lot of it, and it took me 2 years to go to the GP to actually talk to them about it, because I just thought I wasn't coping with it. I didn't realize anything was wrong. It was only after I'd started CrossFit that I'd met a veteran who had PTSD from war and then PTSD from losing his legs in war. And he was like, "You're not crazy. It's not that you're not coping, you've got PTSD. Just because you're not a soldier doesn't mean you don't have it. You need to go to the doctor." And it took me the 2 years to actually go and sit down with our family GP, who went, "Why the fuck's it taking you so long to come in and see me? I've seen your whole family in here about 5 times in that 2 years, but you're only just coming in." And he was like, "Everything you described is textbook PTSD, but I'm going to go through this tick list." And it was a list of 30 symptoms, and there was only 2 on there that I didn't tick. And he was like, "You're not crazy. You've got PTSD, and I can help you with that." Because the big thing for me was not sleeping. So when I didn't sleep, I'd end up in the gym at like 2 a.m. and I would literally make myself a coffee, an iced coffee, take it to the gym in a big jug, and I'd be in the gym for about 4 hours just trying to quieten my mind. And I'd come home at about 6 a.m. in the morning when my mum and dad were getting up for work, and they'd be like, "Where have you been?" I was like, "Gym. Like, my head's not great." And they'd just leave you to it.
Yeah, because they don't want to stop you doing
Yeah.
something because it's getting in your way, and they have to let you process it and
Yeah.
figure it out. It's really hard to tell somebody that there might be something wrong,
Mm.
but lack of sleep, that's tough, because that's when the noises start as well. Just because you sleep deprived, that's it, you know. How are you managing it now, and the build up to the first time you go back into the gym doing strongman or strong
Um,
woman?
it was, so I was doing CrossFit at the time. I used to compete in it, doing CrossFit. And then when I sort of retired from CrossFit because my leg injury was, it would flare up a lot in the middle of competitions because it was so high impact on my leg that it just didn't cope with the force going through it, and it would swell up and I wouldn't be able to weight bear on it. So I then ended up moving to helping organisers run adaptive categories. I got my judges certificate, so I travelled to Ireland and everything and judged CrossFit Games qualifiers, and did like the other side of the sport and sort of tried to push the adaptive side and got more people into it, arranged training days so people could come and train at a centralised gym with people with all different disabilities and feel like, right, we aren't the only one in the country with a disability doing CrossFit. You got to meet people and build that adaptive network yourself. And then when I was doing that, I got an Instagram message from a lass who used to do disabled strong woman, called Hayley. And she was like, "Have you ever tried it?" I was like, "No, I haven't." And she was like, "Do you want to? Like, Brits is coming up in 6 weeks." And I was like, "Okay." So I went into Brits with 4 weeks of strongman training under my belt.
And how did that go?
I won it.
You won.
Yeah.
And what does that do to you?
It didn't sink in for about a month afterwards because I sort of just went not really knowing what I was doing. Like, there was events in like the monster dumbbell press that I'd never done before. I'd pressed normal dumbbells, and Hayley was trying to take me through how to do it, you know, like with the proper rack position and everything, and I just couldn't get it. So I just literally brute strengthed it, just like a normal dumbbell press up with a monster dumbbell. And they were like, "What?" I was like, "I don't know." I was like, "I've not got time to learn the technique. I'm just gonna do what I can do and get it done."
Get the thing up.
Yeah.
So that clearly lit the fire, didn't it? Yeah.
And after that, I went from Brits to the Arnold's UK, yeah, Arnold's UK, and then Worlds, all within about 4 months of each other.
Are you still competing now? Is this quite recent?
No, that was my last title. Was 2022. Was the Worlds, my last Worlds. But I took a year out last year because I have problems with my ankle, so I shattered my ankle. And I've had a lot of surgery on it and ended up with degenerative osteoarthritis in it, to the point where I couldn't actually weight bear on it and ended up with a wheelchair. So good job we had a wheelchair accessible gym. That I was in the wheelchair or on a crutch at home and in the gym.
Constantly having to accept blocks
Yep.
all of the time. Becca, what's that like to go through, or is it just another thing you get on with?
That was, so my ankle was probably the cause of most of my dark times, because I've had a lot of surgery on it. I think I worked out the other day that I've had about 25 operations and procedures on it in 8 years to try and get it to work properly or to be pain-free. Pain-free is always the goal. It might not function very well, but pain-free is the end goal. And I would have a period of time where I'd have a surgery, do the rehab, have maybe 6 months or a year before my symptoms started again. And that was the vicious cycle that was in. I had a bone debridement done in lockdown, and I took my recovery really slowly because I didn't want to rush back to the gym and potentially speed up the degeneration back in it again. And I got back competing, and just at the tail end of my competition year, it massively flared up to the point where I came home from work in the hospital and had to wait for Dan to come home to pick me up out of the car because I couldn't stand on it.
Frustrating.
Yeah, but that was like my cycle, that it would get better, and I'd be constantly waiting for when. It was this ticking time bomb, when's it going to get worse, because it didn't just gradually get worse. Originally it was like degeneration over 2 years. So you'd get, the mobility would get a bit less in my ankle, or the pain would increase a bit. As it got worse, it would be one day, it would just go like that. Like I'd be lifting in the gym, and then the next day I wouldn't be able to stand on it. And it would be that for months. And I was quite fortunate at the start of last year. I had 3 months where I had no pain at all. That's why I started training again. I got back onto stones. I did a bit of weightlifting, like Olympic weightlifting, because I hadn't done it for a while. We did a carpal at the gym, and I even got on the carpal for the first time with an ankle that doesn't really work.
Really?
Yeah. And then all of a sudden one day, we weren't even training. We'd had a bit of time off. I couldn't walk again. Pain was back, worse than ever. And I had a big surgery in July last year to try sort that out.
Must be frustrating, Becca, because all you want to do is train.
Yeah.
You've had one major injury, the loss of the arm, and now it's the ankle.
Yeah.
It's causing you more problems than the arm.
Yeah. Like I always say, like, losing a limb is a very big thing, but my arm was pretty straightforward. Like I broke my elbow, damaged the artery, tried to fix it, it didn't work. It had to go. That was like a 2-day job. Like they tried to fix it, didn't work. Next day they amputated it. Like my leg was still causing me problems 7.5 years on from the date of my accident. And at the moment it's doing good. This surgery that I had in July should eliminate anything in the future, but I haven't managed to get back training yet because I had this mental barrier that I'm just waiting for it to go. I'm waiting for something to happen with it.
You're stopping yourself.
Yeah, because it's like if I do something, it's going to get worse. Even though they've said it shouldn't, I had an ankle fusion, so my ankle is just one solid bone, so unless I break it, it's not going to cause me any pain and it can't get any worse. But I had this block in my head because I've had so many operations, so many recoveries. Like I worked out, I've learned to walk 5 times in 8 years because I've had that many big surgeries where I've had to be non-weight bearing and walk again. And then it would all happen all over again. That I just can't get past this mental block of it's just going to get worse.
So how are you managing that if you can't train?
You
train around it?
Not at the minute. I've got my first solution was to get a training plan from someone. So I'm getting a plan from Hicksy now. And because he's Dan's friend, it means Dan dobs me in it if I don't do it, which is good accountability and everything. But that fear is still in the back of my mind all the time. And because I had other injuries going on at the same time, if anything tweaks, my brain just goes, you're going to hurt yourself. It's going to go bad.
a lot of times when I'm having conversations with people, there's an end solution that was in the past, but you're currently living through the
Yep.
struggle again, and it continues.
Yep.
So how are you managing this, Becca?
Um, I'm in the gym a lot, and there's quite a few good friends in there that I can talk to about it. And I have family support through it. I've got my partner and his boys are really good help, and they'll just be like, why don't you just try that, just see what it does. If it hurts, it hurts. Don't do it again, but just try.
So it's the gym community kind of helps,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah, because it's your world. It's where you're comfortable.
Yeah.
One last message to anybody out there, anything in your own words about what you've been through, somebody in your position or was in your position or currently going through something similar, whatever you want to say to somebody out there.
um don't be afraid to try the things that scare you. Life is different, and there's going to be so many things you're going to have to learn to adapt to and potentially change or not do again. But you need to try them. Don't be afraid to try and fail, because if you try, it's not a failure.